Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jessica Walter. I'd like to thank CADARO for bringing us today's webinar. Hold on just 1 second. We're good. I'd like to thank CADARO for bringing us today's webinar. CADARO, a tech firm, offers digitally integrated solutions for grain, fertilizer, and feed processors. Its inline, vertical, and incline solutions provide precise real-time data, measuring dry commodities flow rates and total weight with typical accuracy within plus or minus 1%, enhancing efficiency and safety for processors in the agricultural industry. Find out more at cadaro.com. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you these webinars are just one of the many resources available through GEAPS. Be sure to tune in to the Whole Grain podcast hosted by my colleague, Jim Lenz. He covers a variety of topics sure to interest those in the grain industry and beyond. You can find Whole Grain on your favorite podcast platform or right on our website at geaps.com/wholegrain. There are several online learning courses available through GEAPS, including our latest Introduction to Grain Operations. There are more than 24 courses designed to benefit those in our industry. Visit geaps.com/training to find the best fit for you and your team. 3,716 of us had a great time at GEAPS Exchange last month. If you were one of those attendees, our presenters today might look a bit familiar. We're already planning for GEAPS Exchange 2025 when we'll be back in Kansas City, Missouri, February 22nd through the 25th. In the near future, we're looking forward to our next event, GEAPS Leadership Conference. Join us May 8th and 9th in Fort Worth, Texas. GEAPS Leadership Conference is a 2-day deep dive into all things leadership with a bit of fun and networking to round things out. Find more at geaps.com/leadership conference. Now, as COO at CADARO, Royce Schulte guides the organization with more than 3 decades of agriculture sales, marketing, and business development experience across North America. He assembled a team that propels the growth of CADARO. Royce is joined today by Gary Roberts, an account manager at NorthWind Technical Services. Gary started his career with NorthWind as a controls engineer on the design team, leveraging his process and control system knowledge. Gary excels as an account manager, delivering cutting-edge automation solutions to the grain handling industry. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Royce and Gary. Take it away, guys.
Thanks a lot. So, Gary, it's going to be interesting as we fade in and out here. We've got our shirts in this green background. Hello, I'm Royce Schulte, President and CEO of CADARO. Look forward to the session today. I want to thank Gary with NorthWinds for joining. Exciting time here. So those that were at GEAPS Exchange here, I guess last month in Kansas City, they had a chance to listen to Gary present on automation. I was there at the session. It was standing room only. So we really wanted to invite an expert with automation to this session. So thanks again, Gary, for joining.
Yep, and I'm Gary Roberts, an account manager for NorthWind. Previously, I was in our design department working with PIDs, electrical schematics, panel layouts, stuff like that. So moving in from that experience has really shown me the importance of automation and of data collection in general.
So just a little bit about CADARO. So CADARO is new to the industry. We manufacture inline grain flow sensors, which really we see as the source for automating your operation. Our sensors have a compact design. They fit into existing pipes and chutes, and they provide accurate instant measurements of both the flow rate and weight. And so we'd like to believe that we're the heart of the automation that's to come.
Yeah, and really, it seems like your product fills a void that everybody's kind of looking for, and it's hard to find that equipment in other places, right? Today, I want to talk a little bit about the goals of automation. Why you're going to look to automate, how you're going to get from an existing system, or in some cases just a brand new system, how you get a fully automated control system, kind of what you can do with that. We're also going to look at 5 specific examples of how automation really helps your system, the benefits of it, the money that it can save you, all of that different things. Towards the end, we'll have a session for your questions. I think you can enter them into the queue as we go, but there'll be a session at the end. We answer some questions.
So Gary, in your presentation at the Jeeps Exchange, I mean, you did a great job explaining to the audience as far as, based on your experience, why are some of the reasons that people need to think about automation?
Yeah, so there's a couple, and you're going to touch more in depth on these later. But the big ones are really, increased safety, reducing the risk of accidents and injuries by removing the person from the dangerous situation, increasing productivity. So kind of streamlining, getting consistent processes, all of that comes with an automated package, right? Also onboarding new talent, turnover nowadays is much more and the experience level is much lower. So getting people onboarded quickly and efficiently is really a good package of automation. The last piece, data is king nowadays. And having the data and being able to do something with that data is really where automation comes in handy. So I want to touch on a couple things because the word automation and bringing it into what originally was a more simple system can be scary, right? There's a couple things that come up when you start talking about automation, and one of those is the price of the system, right? I mean, typically people think it's a very expensive system compared to a push button panel. It is. So second is we've got the second point I want to talk about is that it's harder to troubleshoot. The idea, at least, is that it's harder to troubleshoot, harder to understand because it's not just turn a switch and it's on, right? I've got a video here. I want to go through it, just kind of talk about what's happening on the screen. Those of you listening, if you can just kind of imagine the system. So we've got a covered storage, flat storage building. Got a truck unload with a pit, elevator leg going up. I've got a diverter that goes to the loadout bin or to a fill conveyor with a plow on it. Got reclaim gates on the bottom and a reclaim conveyor. So you can see on the right, all you have is a source select, a destination select, your mode of loadout, how many gates are open, how many gates are closed, the order in which you open those. So the system's really great about sequencing, making sure downstream equipment's running and ready for material. You don't have high levels that are going to bog down your system. And it's also very good about sequencing startup and sequencing start down, right? So you're going to shut off in inverse order, right? So you don't end up with plugged legs, and it doesn't take very long before plugged legs pay for themselves, right? The next point of this, we're going to move to it here shortly. You can add in some automated fan control, some moisture control, depending on if you have the right sensors. That's really the big story, is if you have the right sensors, right? Having the capability of automatically controlling the fans based off of ambient temperatures, based off of humidities, based off of wind speed, right? All of those factors come into play. Also you can, from this automated fan control, having it in one package really ties in all of the equipment. So if you've got to worry about your inrush currents because you turn on all the fans at once, your electrical bill skyrockets, right? Having it all tied together and being able to control, each piece individually and as a group is really beneficial.
That's impressive. So that's a lot. So I'm the new guy to the industry, especially as it relates to automation. And, we're focused on how we can measure and how we can fit into providing the source of information to start automating from. But as you cover all that, and that was a great dashboard, how do you bring it down to maybe a newbie or a new beginner as far as, how we may step into automation?
Sure. Yeah. And there's different levels of what you consider automation. A basic push button control panel can be an automated solution, right? If you put in relays, you put in timers, you can make an automated solution out of a push button type panel. They've been around for ages and ages. I mean, since you've been manufacturing stuff, push button panels have existed. And this can be, an individual panel with a bunch of lights and a bunch of switches, and you manually control each one. It can also be, a motor control center that's got start stop on each fan and each leg and everything. And And really the downfall of that is that the operator is expected to know how to control the system. And that's not a bad thing if you've got a guy that's been around for 40 years, but you onboard somebody that's never seen grain before, coming from the city, he's never seen grain before. So he doesn't know how to control the system. He doesn't know the order to turn stuff on. So the next level of that is really where you start getting into what I would consider true automation, right? You still have the push buttons, but you dumb it down a little bit. You make the PLC do the work in the background instead of the operator on the front end. And what you get by this is, like I showed you in the original thing, the original display, you've got a couple of selector switches, source, destination, and you start it, right? And then in the background, the PLC takes care of everything. So that's one level up. You start getting some data collection, you start getting some points of reference from that. Typically, if you're controlling a system like that, it's because it's a little more complex than just, you know, turning on a leg and turning on a couple conveyors. The next level below that, or above that, we'll say, is fully automated HMI controlled system, which is just like what I showed you. Right. On that, I didn't talk about it, but you had sequencing up and down, you had the hazard monitoring sensors, you had all of the data that you're pulling in from that. Having a display that can show all that, and I'll get to it here in a second, being able to pull that into a centralized, easy to read package is really great. So getting, a lot of you guys are going to have the basic push button control panel or slightly above that. So getting to a fully automated system is going to take a retrofit of some kind. You know, this can be phased, it can be bin by bin, it can be system by system. But if you've got an existing system, you want to turn it into an automated system, you're going to have to do some install, add some sensors. It's going to take a little bit of work. If you're putting in a new system, at this day and age, I would just recommend putting in an HMI controlled system. It's what people are used to seeing.
Sure. Well, thanks for walking through that, because I've been to facilities that have, you walk into their control room and they have laid out exactly what you've shown. And I've also been with customers out in the field, and as we're talking about technology, said, we don't have a PLC on site. Mm-hmm. And so it really speaks to the, you know, the variation as far as, you know, where people are at in the process for automation.
Yeah, exactly. Have you seen those? They're older style, but you walk in and it's push buttons and switches, but they've got outlines of the equipment behind the switches. Oh yeah. And they've got level lights, and I think it's really cool, right? But what it is it's a basic HMI. Sure. It's, you know, they're representing the system visually and still controlling it from the switches and stuff. So one thing that you can, as you add on and you get some of the hazard monitoring, preventive maintenance, all of that stuff, you can start getting, you know, email and text alerts for specific tags. If your leg goes down and it's not supposed to, or hey, you know, Royce, you were supposed to turn the leg off before you left, but you didn't, right? You don't want that to run all night, wasting energy. So you can get some of those text alarms. Sure. And I briefly touched on, I think my next slide will cover it a little bit better, but the remote operation and MES type level stuff, manufacturing execution system level stuff is. Well,
as you're talking, I'm envisioning, you know, the pictures of the equipment and, you know, to turn on and off, but I'll step one back from that. I've been to some that, you know, I hate to admit where they're at, but it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. So they actually have numbers, and you follow the sequence as far as to turn on, and you better follow the sequence to turn off, or else you're going to plug something.
I mean, that's better than nothing, but it'd be nice to have an automated system to control that.
Sure.
So I've got a screen here, and this is what I would consider an MES level dashboard, right? So you're gonna pull in some of your operational efficiencies, some of your control systems that you want to check uptime, you want to check downtime. This is a really simple interface. So this here is it's for a 3-mill system. So you can see top left, you can see your materials that's remaining. You can see what you've used, how much time you've got remaining. You can see preventative maintenance. You can see staffing, if people showed up or they're late or whatever, that can all be right here. Okay. You can see your uptime, your downtime. This is a custom screen that NorthWind has put together. There are other groups that do, you know, a more standardized type system, but you know, this has worked for us. It's worked for our customers. Not everybody's system's the same, and the amount of data and what they want to see is completely different customer to customer. So we've found success with this, and you can really show a whole different load of information here.
Interesting.
So I've been talking for quite a while here. I want to move on a little bit. We'll explore the key challenges and what automation can really, do for the customer. Excuse me. So first I see here labor challenges. Would you consider this one of the key drivers that is pushing customers to automation?
I believe so, because as we've come into this and as I've participated now for the second year in GEAPS, as I think about the pain points within the grain handling industry or processing of grain, labor's, is either number one or number two. And so, by and large, I see some of the challenges that we've heard from existing customers is, the workforce is aging. We have a lot of experience. We have the baby boomer age that, is in the process of retiring out. And, and really there's not a lot of people coming into the workforce that we can really access in remote communities. And another challenge that we've experienced after COVID is, remote work became popular. And so some of the talent that's out there is actually has opportunities that didn't exist previously in some of these remote communities. And so as we look at, labor challenges, I do believe automation is going to be the source of how we help address these challenges. As we think about the operators and now with automation, potentially we have less human intervention. And that's going to create opportunities not only to possibly adjust where staff is located and what tasks they're doing, and maybe using staff for higher value tasks.
Sure.
And so that, it seems like that's one opportunity. And as we think about labor and attracting labor to the grain handling world, I think that's an opportunity as far as, what they're going to be doing, where they're going to be doing it, and most likely that they're already used to technology. I mean, I've been amazed as you're sitting here and they're looking at how things are done, and they're like, well, why can't I just do that from my phone?
Yeah.
And so, the adoption curve for technology, I think, is going to be accelerated. And again, I think that's where the opportunity around labor is for automation.
Yeah, I think it's really unique. You talk about baby boomers and their age and retirement age. And, when you go into a plant that's running efficiently and it's not a fully automated system, you have an operator that's been there, right?
Sure.
He's been there 30, 40, 50 years. New talent is not gonna be able to do that.
Sure.
They're not gonna understand the system like he does. They're not gonna be able to do maintenance. And not only that, but their reluctance to do kind of some of that dirty, difficult work is so much higher than it used to be.
Yeah, well, dirty is one thing, but coming from Amarillo, Texas, something I've learned as I've traveled more in the Midwest over the the winter months is the temperature.
Sure.
And so as you think about working out in the environment and physically loading trucks or having to visually watch a truck being loaded, I can only imagine that, some of the newer talent and people coming into the workforce would rather do that from another location.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and one thing I see, safety always gets brought up. I think labor challenges being either a first or a second, because those are kind of interchangeable. You just talk a little bit about how automation can assist with worker safety.
Sure. And so as I think about automation, really it's the adoption of technology. What is technology going to allow us to do? And so potentially to address worker safety, as we think about, potentially moving workers from being out in the plant or in the facility, physically loading a truck to a remote location, just thinking about, now the proximity to where an event may occur or an incident. So fires, falls, any injuries, and we talk about grain entrapment. And so, that's been a highlight. And if you go to the GEAPS Exchange, you'll see a whole session, right, where they're doing great trainings around that.
Yep, big semi trailer. It's a big deal at GEAPS. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And so, as we think about worker safety, one of the tools that CADARO has is now we have these flow sensors, and because we can accurately measure in real time in line both flow rate and weight, now we can start automating from those measurements. And so we believe that our tools and our resources are focused around the heart of automation. And because now that we can automate, now we can move workers in the picture here, you move them into a control room or to the head office. So they're loading the trucks from the head office. And in some cases, we're even seeing people that are starting to load remotely, right? Off site. Sure. And so they're actually sending trucks and loading and then scaling them in and out of another location that may be 20 miles down the road, but they've changed up how they're staffing those locations.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you take them out of the location, they can't get hit by a truck. They're not going to get frostbite because they're sitting out in the cold and the dust and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we talked about the big two. Most people are going to consider the big two. You want to touch a little bit on operational efficiency and start getting into, customer specific stuff here?
Sure. And so as I think about, the top two, I think those are in the right places. But as we think about operational efficiency, as we, I've heard it termed that, the people that are out there today, they're very experienced. And because of that experience, they've learned the art of operating their facility. And they just, they can sense what's going on. They know what to do. They know the sequence to turn on the buttons or turn off the buttons. And so, that's an art, in my opinion. And so as I think about where we are and maybe where we're going into the future, it's really how do we move it from an art to a science? And how do we start integrating some of the technology that's been out on the farm for some time into our actual processing and grain handling? And so that's where the operational efficiency comes in for me. So maybe just an example, some of our customers are using our devices, and here's a picture of one in a load out facility. And so one of the advantages of automation is possibly looking at truck loading. And as we came into the business and we looked at opportunities for our flow sensors, truck loading was one of the applications that was really quick to adopt. And we had estimated, that cycling of trucks is somewhere between 30 to 60%. And that's with people that are very skilled, right? They have a lot of experience and are good about loading. When we were at the latest Jeep show, I was surprised the number of people that were coming by our booth, and that range was really from, I thought 60 was on the high end, but on the low end was about 50%, all the way up to about 100. And in some cases, they were saying, and we're maybe cycling a truck once or twice. And so they're either trying to add on a little bit or take off a little bit. And so, we're seeing, operational efficiency around truck loading. Just product transfer. Now that you can measure in line in real time, if you're doing transfers, if you're blending, if you're batching, there's new opportunities around automation just because we can measure. And ultimately, we increase the overall efficiency or productivity on a daily or seasonal basis.
Yeah. And the other thing to think about, you're circling trucks like that. That ties right back to safety and drivers getting impatient. That doesn't take very long before they want to go somewhere else.
For sure. And in some cases where they've had truck cycling and they have a line of trucks to come through, by just that's the bottleneck. And so as they see more truck loading and more efficiency where they're 2.5 to 3.5 minutes loading trucks out, now they potentially in some facilities where they maybe are bringing in unit trains, now they possibly can actually increase their throughput, right? And the overall output of their operations.
Sure. So how does your product specifically affect customers' bottom line? We talked about truck cycling a little bit. I'm sure you're going to touch on that a little bit more, but how does it really affect the bottom line?
Yeah, so we've touched on. We'll go a little deeper around the truck loading. We've seen cases where people are looking for inventory verification or management. In some cases where they have grain handling facilities and they're attached to a processing. Maybe it's ethanol, where one entity has a bulk weigher, but the other entity is transferring inventory. So they're looking for a secondary means of verifying inventory management or flow, and they can reconcile inventory quicker if there is a discrepancy. We've talked about improved worker safety, and ultimately, as we think about workers, is how we acquire good talent and how we retain talent, because they're in a work environment and they see a path for the future as far as their skill set. So just an example as far as looking at the bottom line, and this is taking it down a level to what's the return on investment, what's the opportunity, why are we thinking about automation? And so it's great, we're addressing labor, we're addressing safety, but if you're going, if you wanted to bring automation into your facilities, generally you're going to have to go ask for the budget. You need to be able to take numbers. So CADARO's created a ROI calculator that we're working to put on our website here in the very near future. And since Ellery's on, we were talking yesterday that, it's very important and we have it on an Excel. So I told her we're going to target April 1st, but obviously that's April Fool's Day. So we may not hit that. So sorry, I had to throw that out there. And again, I appreciate you joining because this made it a lot more fun to present this way.
Yeah.
So just an example as far as truck loading, say on average in the Midwest, if trucks are, the hourly rate's $125. And if you took a truck and if you could cycle them, for being under or overloaded and bring them back around and either take product off or add more product, let's just say it takes 15 minutes. And so that cycling, if we're thinking of, about 1,000 bushel per load, our cost just on those numbers would be about 3 cents a bushel, right? So as people think about what their margins are per bushel of grain, 3 cents is potentially your cost. If you're cycling truck 60% of the time, just, we're roughly about 2 cents a bushel. And if you're down to 30%, you're down to 1 cent. And again, if you're doing it 100% of the time, you're looking at 3 cents a bushel that you're adding additional cost. And so that's one way that by measuring and automating, potentially we can keep that cycling of trucks down or reduce that. The other side is, as far as automation, is thinking about the labor, right? As far as having somebody physically out there, having to load the truck out there, possibly being moved to a control room with an operator that's already there, being moved to the scale to where they're actually loading the trucks from the scale. And so, and that creates an opportunity of either labor savings or reallocation of labor to maybe some higher value tasks. And just as an example, if you're handling about 1 million bushels a year, with our CADARO complete plan, where we provide all of the sensor technology, the software, the support, our customers are seeing anywhere from about a 40 to 400% net ROI in year one. And if we're looking at over 2 million bushels, that can scale up to be about 100 to 500% net ROI on year one.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, there's opportunities here not only to help automate and help with labor and safety, but ultimately when we think about the bottom line, how is it going to help us, as far as our profitability at the end of the day? So you talked about a little bit about data, and in that dashboard, there was a lot of information there. And so for me personally, looking at our technology is the data that we're generating now is the potential to start creating transparency as far as what we're doing. And, the example that we were talking about yesterday is my kids got me this Fitbit about 5 or 6 years ago. And I thought it was a watch. And so I've been wearing it for 5 or 6 years now. But what I've, come to realize is in 5 to 6 years, it's been collecting all this data, all this information. So now it's easy to look back as far as, how much did I walk? How much did I not walk?
Mm-hmm.
How good did I do? I mean, if you logged your weight, where's it been over the time? And so it's creating metrics, it's creating information. You talked about, this is great. This data is all great, but it's really about, now you can see it. What are you going to do about it? And so with this technology, now that we can, I guess you take a step back, right? You can't manage what you don't measure.
Sure.
Now that we're able to measure, now we can start managing. And the reason is we can create KPIs. We can actually see, how have we performed? And then we can give our employees or our facilities a target, right? Based on historical performance, and we can start dialing this up. We've had customers that have used our technology across shifts, and they could actually see in a 24-hour period, the day shift versus night shift. And how they performed.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, then you can actually start some competition as far as they're looking at, oh, we don't want to be one up. We want to do better. And so again, that's just around creating some of that transparency.
No, you mentioned it. I heard a saying that, data is the new oil, right? And you talked about your Fitbit. First of all, think of how much money big companies are paying to find your workout data, right? And they send you direct stuff. Oh, you go for a walk at 8 o'clock every day. We're going to send you here's some new shoes, right? They're going to send you ads for it. But the second piece of that is really, you need to obtain the data and you need to process it, right? That's when it becomes a truly valuable commodity.
Sure.
Yep.
And so as we think about transparency, we talked about, it's actionable, right? Once you've measured it, now you can start creating actions as far as how do you manage and how do you improve. You have those KPIs. You talk a little bit about data and how do you integrate it into, other systems and your ERP systems. As I think about and looking at corporations today, and they have sustainability goals, right? But, with some of these measurements, now we potentially can start quantifying how we're delivering on those sustainability goals.
Sure.
And so it's been amazing to me to have a technology, but it's such a broad range of applications, from loading, inventory verification, helping with, labor, helping with safety. And so I'm excited as far as where the future is for automation, not just for the sake of automation and getting to that very sophisticated view, but all the opportunities it's going to create for our industry.
Yep. I think that's pretty much all we've got today. I don't know if there were questions. I can't see the queue, I don't think.
Yes, there's Steve Schaefer is wondering, are the CADARO products approved for use in Canada, CSA or ULC approved?
Yeah, so as far as Canada, so I guess I should start with, so we're not certified for commerce, so NTEP certified.
Yep.
And so our target is plus or minus 1%. And then as it relates to certifications for Canada, we were talking about this yesterday, as far as in the US being UL certified for certain environments. And so that's a great question, and just need to reach out to us and we give you more details.
Yeah, and I can touch on that a little bit. We do some business in Canada. It's not, our main thing. And I know there's two kind of big classifications there. There's the CSA and there's ESA or ULC, right? I know our shop, we're 508A and we're rated for both domestic and Canada. They share kind of a similar division. So like you and I have a good opportunity to work together, right?
Sure, definitely.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Is there anything you wanted to ask attendees in particular about? See if any answer. Okay. Well, thank you, Royce and Gary, for taking the time to share this valuable information. And thank you all for joining us today. Don't forget, if you're a GEAPS member, you'll be able to view this webinar and others in the GEAPS video library at any time. Side note, you'll also be able to see their presentations from the Idea Exchange, a GEAPS exchange, in the video library as well. So thank you for joining us, everyone, and be safe out there.
Thanks.
Thank you.